There comes the time and the time of men that the world know very well. But to them that the story is told about forever remains a tale. 1,000 years has come and gone, and man is none the wise. To them that the story is told about will end up in man's demise. Return of the King, return of the King, make way, make way, make way. Return of the King, return of the King, forever where he may reign. Time waits for no one, for everyone subject to time. From tales of God to tales of men, therein your answer real life. Return of the King, return of the King, make way, make way, make way. Return of the King, return of the King, forever where he may reign. Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, Senator Godfrey, the fifth Count of Anjou, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know as in the Third Tibetan English Church of England as the Christ one, or Jesus Christ. It is May 21st, 2024, which is the Berber year 2974. I greet you and on behalf of all the ancestors who have gone and passed, all the heirs and successors are here and who will continue to manifest on this plane that thing may manifest. I greet you in love, truth, and most importantly, freedom. This lesson today is pretty much uh, a lesson to validate that I am indeed who I say I am. Okay. A lot of us are questioning or bringing questions about status. Okay. Status, one's right and freedom pertaining to one status, because one's status determines one's standing in law. Okay, one standing in law. When we say standing in law, we're talking about either some type of positive law, i.e., by way of statute, either some way by what we call case law. It's by way of what we call some legislation, by constitution, by charter, by some religious affiliation, by some type of ecclesiastical literature, etc. But no, we must know that over here in North America, religious and state has been separated. So we know that each has a body of politics for which your protection comes from. So if your body of politics that is associated with the state is not visible here on this physical plane, then you have no protection at all. And on the only protection you got is the body of politics that allows you to have your religious freedom and standing. And that is the Constitution of the States and the Constitution of the United States, which you call United States of America. Okay? We're going to do uh, uh, a deep examination about the United States of America, about their laws, about their government, about how they got their start, okay? And I'm going to show you that their start came from here, the Plantagenet crown, all right? Under Godfrey the fifth kind of Anjou, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem, okay? They started here and they will end here, okay? All right, so this is a lesson for all those who are over here, not over on Europe, Africa, Asia, but here, to bring any evidence that you so-called have in regards to an estate that you have here, whether it's based off a right to own property, a right to religious freedom, whether it's a right to travel, whether it's a right to be exempt from taxes, you need to validate that by way of proving that your people created these laws. Because if it's not created by your people, then they're not your laws. Okay? They're not your laws. This is going to put a lot of people on Front Street, but hey, it's got to be done. All right. As always, I have a narrative as I'm going to play, but further, and always, I want to give honor to my queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, as well as Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, Bishop Searcy from the House of Searcy, as well as all the members, all the inquirers, all the students, all those who are led under the auspices of my voice to continue on in the progression of your revelation that's being unfolded here at the Third Typical English Church of England, as it will get better and better and better and better. Okay, so without further ado, let's play the narrative. This is going to pretty much involve the Canaanite Moors. I'm not picking on the Moors, but Moors are claimed to be descendants of the Spanish Moors, Moranos, and their story is not valid. Okay, nor is the lawyer's story valid in regards to their claim to be the protectors of the citizens in regards to their due process rights of law. And what you're going to see here particularly is an argument between a lawyer and members of the Canaanite and Moorish affiliation societies in regards to their understanding and their perception about not only the right to travel, about the interpretation of Saradaisi, as well as um, the juror and what's the fact. Okay, a lot of these questions that they raise are presumptive at best. Okay, presumptive at best because none of them have the authority to operate over here on this particular estate, which is allodial by law, has been allodial always under law, even in the state of what we call feudal tenure estates, which were abolished under the Abolition Act of Charles II in 1660. We know that the statutes of frauds came around in 1677. We know that the statute of frauds in this Feudal Tenure Abolition Act of 1660 was the creation of a type of recording of an estate or record or contract, etc., in regards to proving the parties that are in question in regards to the contract, agreement, conveyance, etc. All right. All of these are governed by laws that predate North American law. Okay. In order to understand that, you must know North American history. Okay. So just listen to the argument that's given by members of the Canaanite Moors, as well as a lawyer. And you are both invited to the Third Typical English Church of England to discuss this even further. All right. So you can reach out to my Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont at the Third Typical English Church of England, or Bishop Searcy from the House of Searcy. And they will definitely schedule a public meeting so that we can discuss this intelligently and with some type of decor. You know what I'm saying? That we'll be able to talk these things out and come to a resolution that in the totality of the conversation, we'll be able to assist our people that are in need. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. Hopefully we won't have any problems today viewing it. Okay. Anybody pay close attention to the conversation. Okay, please.
Pardon the interjection. I know you were saying, once again, although the word concede that, and like I said, the lack of the word does not make democracy unconstitutional. Public, which is what we have, is not. It's
Greetings, Archbishop Bell from the House of Belmont. No sound. I don't know why they keep doing this to me. Hold on. Thank you. Bear with me, Archbishop. Let me know if there's sound. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Greetings, greetings, Brother Spencer from the House of Spencer. Hear me, Archbishop? Hear me, Archbishop? Thank you. All right, once again, give an introduction, greetings to all you who are here today. Don't worry about the video. We won't need it. I don't know why they won't allow me to play videos, but hey, it's all good. All right, but this lesson is going pretty good because it's all about understanding one's right on this land and who the rights on this land pertains to. Because everybody don't have rights on this land. We know that either the rights on this land belong to you by way of it being a birthright, or the rights on this land pertain to that which was given to you by way of your immigration and your migration here. Okay? It's very, 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 very important. No one is going to be able to give you a detailed schematic look at the rabbit hole at the bottom of the rabbit hole. Okay, we're gonna go to the bottom of the rabbit hole. No one is able to do what I'm gonna be able to do. Give you a total synopsis from the beginning to the end, based upon who really owns what here and what we call North America. Without a shadow of a doubt, all right, we're gonna go through the discussions concerning them. I'm approved once and for all the validity of who we say we are as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Okay. Any questions? Please run them, because I can answer. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. Excluding the video, let's just go back and travel through time. Time never was when we were not. As the life of time begins, the time will come when we, as the descendants of our ancestors, will be no more. When that happens, that means that it results in interstate. Interstate meaning that there are no more heirs. When there are no more heirs, then that means that the land already automatically escheats. Escheats is called inquisition post mortem. Inquisition post mortem. Okay, that falls under the livery of seisin, the delivery of possession of land tenure from the grantor, the grantee. If it's not able to be conveyed to the grantee by the grantor, it ends up with what they call inquisition post mortem, which is what we call escheat today, which automatically falls into the hands of either the crown under the jure government or the de facto government, which we have now called bona begotten. Okay, so no one is ever going to be able to show you once and for all how important it is to be a member of the Third Temple English Church of England. Okay? If you want to join any group, you can join Sam's Club, if you can join the gym, if you can join uh the gun range, if you can join Blockbuster, if you can join Timu, or any other public forum that's giving you ability to be able to be associated with, then you better make sure it provides you everything that you associate with heaven, or else it's going to be your hell. Okay, it's going to be your hell. All right, so it's very important for you to, if you are concerned with the truth, validating the truth, and being able to show the truth. No one's going to be able to prove it, even if you know it, but through me. Okay, knowing it is not the key. Being able to exercise what you know is the key. Okay, no one is able to do that by outside of the power of the Third Temple English Church of England. All right, No one is able to do what they do. This has been a well-kept secret, okay? I'm actually sharpening my sword for when I go up into these assize courts to prove once and for all who estate does this belong to by way of my core warranto, or order to show cause, which is affirmative defense. How you saying that I'm wrong when it's yet you're the one that's committing the fraud. Okay, I'm gonna show you. No one is gonna be able to show you the fraud with evidence. Everybody talk about the evidence, all right? Hearsay, but no one actually has a concrete evidentiary presentation to present before any court of law, especially one that of criminal action in regards to criminal faults. All right, no one has able, no one can do it like we doing it here at the Third Temple English Church in real time. In real time. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Everybody, please take this information seriously. Please. I'm gonna start from the rabbit when he left his hole. This is when the rabbit left his hole. We're tracing the rabbit. We got a camera on it. Okay, so wherever this rabbit go, we're gonna be able to see wherever he go. All right, wherever this rabbit go. Yesterday I was watching the video on YouTube. They put a camera on a cat, and the cat was following another cat. And I mean, this cat was hauling tail. But the camera was so precise because the cat was going under the cars and everything in real time. You know what I'm saying? It actually caught the cat and they wound up fighting. But the thing is, who will put a camera on the cat to see the interaction between two cats, which is based upon what we call war? Okay. It was warring. They wasn't making love. They was arguing with each other. They had a big problem in this video. So I look at that the same way. All right. So what I'm going to do is put a camera on Wikipedia. Okay. We're going to attach a camera to Wikipedia. Whatever Wikipedia take us, we're going to be able to see here in real time. Okay. Because uh, Wikipedia serves as the portal. Okay. As the medium for the vacuum of the information that we're retrieving from time out of mind, time immemorial, a time where the physical body can't go, yet we still believe that exists because we got the evidence here to validate it. All right. No one has took that evidence that we have here and validated pertaining to them as the people where the evidence originated from as we go back in time like we're doing now, based off the scope of view I'm giving you through the lens of what we call Wikipedia. Okay? I like that, didn't you? Hold on. This might be a long one. Franco-American Alliance. Franco-American Alliance. Keyword, Franco-American. Franco-American. Frankish American. Not French. Frankish American. Okay? So I'm going to be jumping. So if you got a good memory, you better put it to use. The I repeat, the Franco-American Alliance was a 1788 alliance between the Kingdom of France and the United States during the American Revolutionary War. Okay? The American Revolutionary War. But this Franco-American alliance was a result of wars that took place with Anglo and France. Okay? It's part of what we call the Anglo and French Wars. Okay? Let's look in the box. See the box, right? These are all the alliances. You know, treaties are alliances. From 777 AD, all right, all the way up to the Franco-American line, okay? We see Scottish is here as well, all right? Franco and Scottish alliance, that goes back to what we call the Old Alliance. The Old Alliance was the alliance that Scotland had with France. We're going to see that mentioned in the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502. We're going to see that mentioned again, okay? Between Henry VII and King James IV, okay? Remember that, okay? Most of you won't, but you got to have it, and we call it to memory. So you see from 777 AD all the way up to 7078 AD, you come into what they call the Franco-American Alliance, which involved Frankish or the Francos, all right, descendant. The Frankish descendant. Very important to understand that, all right? Back to the paragraph. Formalized in 1778, alliance, it was military pact in which the French provided many supplies for the Americans. The Netherlands and Spain later joined as allies of France. Britain had no European ally. Okay? The French alliance was possible once the American captured a British invasion army at Saratoga on October 1777. Demonstrating the viability of American cause, the alliance became controversial after 1793 when Great Britain and the Revolutionary French agents went to war and the United States declared itself neutral. Relations between France and the United States worsened as the latter became closer to Britain and the Jay Treaty of 1795, leading to an undeclared quasi-war. The alliance was defunct by 1794 and formally ended in 1800. So we see here an alliance between Franco and America in 1778, which is called the Treaty of Alliance, which was a treaty made with France before Great Britain. All right? Before Great Britain came into the picture. We must understand this because the Revolutionary War ended in 1783. The reason why the war ended is because the focal point of why the French took their what's called British drop interest in America as a result of the overseas wars that were taking place, which is what we call the Second 100-Year Wars. Once again, the Second 100-Year Wars, which was a series of wars that lasted for hundreds of years. We had the first 100-Year Wars, then the second 100-Year Wars. We're going to discuss those as well today. So please write those terms down. The first 100-Year Wars and the second 100-Year Wars. Wars, not war, but wars. Plural. Okay? All right, so let's deal it like this. Anglo-sphere. We're talking about land in the sphere of what we call Anglo-sphere, okay? And its highest point is here. The core Anglo-sphere is what you see called the New World to the European or the immigrants who migrated here. They call it the New World, but we call it the Anglo-sphere, okay? The Anglo-sphere. The Anglo-sphere is an American sphere of influence with a core group of nations that today maintain close political, diplomatic, and military cooperation. While the nations include different sources vary, the Anglosphere is usually not considered to include all countries where English is the official language, so it's not synonymous with what we call the Anglophone. Okay? Though commonly includes nations are those that were formerly part of the British Empire and retained the English language and the English common law. So the English language based upon the English common law is those that were the national before the British Empire came into existence. Okay? You must understand that. The English people who were the English nationals who were subject to the common law were the original inhabitants of the Anglosphere before the British Empire even got underway. Okay? We must understand what's going on because I'm creating the timeline to go back down this rabbit hole. Okay, we see the rabbit hole and he's jumping around where we can't catch him, but we gonna catch him this time, y'all. Okay, the Anglosphere. So there you got a picture graph of the Anglosphere. All right, you see that. All right, the Anglosphere. Once again, the Anglosphere. When we look at that term, the term itself, Anglosphere, perception of the Anglosphere must go back into what we call time immemorial. Before these records that we keep here were recorded. All right. So that means there must be some type of record that was here before the British Empire even came into existence. There must be some type of record here before the Spanish Empire came into position. There must be some type of record here before the Frankish even got into existence, came into existence, because we see those territories here, whether territories governed under what we call the colonial government or what we call North America, prior to it being called the Anglosphere. Because we know that the Anglosphere deals with the English people and those who were of the English nation under their common law. And we know that that was created by the Plantagenet crown, Henry II. All right. But we know that the English had overseas possessions as well. Okay. The English, i.e., the Anglo, when we say Anglo, we're making the distinction between English because we know the first English regnal king was William the Conqueror when he invaded England, i.e., Anglo, and the spirit that they encompassed based upon the territory. Because when we talk about the English overseas possession, they made mention to the territories over here in North America. Okay? Let's just get a look at it real quick. English overseas possession. Within the Anglosphere, okay? English overseas possession within the Anglosphere. All right, we're dealing with it from a uh, uh, geography, and history. Or we're going to connect the dots with not with just legislation from Parliament, but legislation from New Jersey and the United States, as well as the Law Review Commission is going to validate that the territory which is in question here in North America was in fact and indeed English overseas possession, known as what we call the Anglosphere, because the word ish pertains to, and the E-N-G-L is synonymous with angle. Whether you spell it E-N-G-L or A-N-G-L, angle. Okay? We must understand the etymology of the word, right? But not depend on the etymology of the word. Still talking about the Anglosphere because the island of what they now call Great Britain, now called United Kingdom, which consists of England, Ireland, and Scotland, is also associated with the other territories of Commonwealth through what they call littoral right, which is land separated from large bodies of water such as seas, oceans. Okay, that's called a littoral right versus a riparian right, which is water separated from like a brook or a dam or a small lake, something like that. Okay, so it's very important to understand that the Anglosphere wasn't just the territories that they called the New World when they immigrated here, but it was the world that was already here before they came here, called the Anglosphere, which were considered the English or Anglo overseas possession. Okay, get that in your head, y'all. English overseas possession. The overseas possession of the Anglosphere, as well as the English or Anglo-colonial possessions, which were part of what we call the English Empire or the Anglo Empire before it even became or came to be known as the British Empire. Okay? They said the English colonial empire. It wasn't just over here, but it was over in what they call Europe as well. All right. And we know that the Europe continent does not include Great Britain, Ireland, and Scotland. Okay. All right. So if it does not include England, Ireland, and Scotland, and they immigrated to England, Ireland, and Scotland, then damn it, who the hell are they? Okay, because Europe is synonymous with Gomar, and Gomar's son was Ashkenaz, where the Jews who or descended down from the Jewish diaspora from what we call Egypt. Okay, going back to 733 BC. All right, which was a fabricated story because we know that these Jews came into England in the 11th century with William the Conqueror, which we're in questioning in regards to the Anglo and French War, because the Anglo-French War that we're talking about, right, which also include what we call the Treaty of Alliance in 1778 with America and ended in 1783. All right, it also includes the Anglo and French alliances going all the way back to the chart we seen when this lesson first started. Okay, so I hope you got a good memory because without it, it's not going to help you. The English overseas possession. Look at the top, y'all. English Empire, redirect here for colonial empire of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, see British Empire. For America in particular, see British colonization of America. For the empire of the planetary, see Angevin Empire. So why would whoever created Wikipedia create the narrative or synopsis of all the associating kingdoms and kings relative to the question of who is the juror king and queen relative to the right to the possession of the empire, which is in question right here on the Third to the English Church platform. Okay, who has a right to the possession? All right, let's prove it. The English overseas possession, also known as the English colonial empire, comprised a variety of overseas territories that were colonized, conquered, or otherwise acquired by the former kingdom of England. Okay, when they say conquered, colonized, they are talking about when England was under occupation. Okay, as well as the overseas territories that was governed by England when it was under occupation. And this will be what we call over here New Spain and New France, because New Spain and New France was a form of occupation by way of what we call discovery, which is nothing more than what we call prescription of sovereignty through acquisition of sovereignty of somebody claiming to be sovereign on land that's not their own. That's not theirs because you immigrated here. You came here when somebody was already here, and the people who were already here in the Anglosphere was that called Anglo. Okay, Anglo. Let's prove it. Let's go to the history of the English overseas possession here in North America. All right. Before you get into what we call acts of union that deals with the unification of England, Ireland, and Scotland, based off the union of the crown in 1603, based off the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502, with Henry VII and King James IV. Okay, which we'll talk about in a second. But also the Kingdom of Scotland, creating the Kingdom of Great Britain, and then the United Kingdom. The many English possessions then became the foundation of the British Empire. So the British Empire foundation is the English Empire foundation, which is its colonies, overseas possessions, which are charters given to create what we call colonies, what we call uh, colonies through charters, do proprietary colonies, or even world colonies. All right, and all this was under the auspices of the king. Okay, the king, and what king is it? The King of England. Right. Let's go to the history concerning the Anglosphere and the Anglosphere overseas possession, which we can draw conclusions just from Wikipedia before we go into any concrete proof. Okay, without even going to any concrete proof to validate it, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. All right, we did not create this image that you're looking at. All right, nor did we create the content for it. We're just using it to validate our story. The Kingdom of England is generally dated from the rule of Ashton from 927. There's the source. Edward, King of Anglo-Saxons. Did you hear that? During the rule of the House of Ninglinga from 1013 to 1014. This would be your Viking under Knut the Great, all right? Swing, Forksbeard, and all the other ones, all right? Let's just get a validation of this is who we're talking about when they invaded England, and this is who the kings of Wessex were warned with from the time of Alfred the Great to Edward the Confessor, okay? From Alfred the Great to Edward the Confessor, not just over here, but in the overseas possessions that we call England and which later became known as Ireland and Scotland. Okay? We must understand the sign. In order to follow the rabbit hole, you got to be able to follow direction. Okay? Because that hole is dark. It's dark and it runs deep. So what are the rule during the rule of the House of Ninglinga? What is that? Let's just see. The Danish House of Ninglinga, or the House of Knut the Great, or Knut the Scissor, was a ruling house in the Middle Ages of Scandinavia and England. Their most famous king was Knut the Great, who gave his name to this dynasty. Other notable members were Knut's father, Swing Forkbeard, grandfather Harold Bluetooth. This is where your Bluetooth come from. Okay? Yes, Bluetooth. His son Hart Canute, Harold Hartfoot, and Swing Knutson. It's also been called the House of Canute, the House of Denmark, the House of Gorn, and the Jelling Dynasty. All right? So this is who we were warned against all the way back in the English overseas possession, going back to Alfred the Great's grandson, Atherton. And the way land was conveyed was based off the ancient ceremony as laid down by Atherton. It was called Livery of Seisen. Okay? Livery of Seisen. And we're going to connect that right here to New Jersey, because New Jersey represents the crown. Okay? Going all the way back to the crown, which was occupied by these kings, going back to Alfred the Great and also Atherton. Okay? Very important for you to understand that. Remember, we're talking about English overseas possession. All right? Then that just include England, Ireland, Scotland. Let's see. I don't even think it include Ireland, Scotland. And Scotland is right there. I don't think it includes Scotland. Right? Kingdom of England, Jimmy dated the rule of Atherton from 927 during the rule of the House of Ninglinga from 1013 to 1014 and 1016 to 1042. England was part of a personal union that included the domains of Scandinavia. In 1066, William the Conqueror Duke of Normandy conquered England, making the Duchess a crown land and of the English throne. You hear that? William the Conqueror, the one who brought the Jews into England, now called Great Britain, now called United Kingdom, he united the English throne with crown land. We know crown land is indenture, okay? Through the remainder of the Middle Ages, the kings of England held extensive territories in France based on their history and their duchy. Under the Angevin Empire, England formed part of the collection of lands in the British Isles, and France held by the Plantagenet dynasty. The collapse of the dynasty led to what we call the Hundred Year War, the Hundred Years' War between England and France. At the outset of the war, the King of England ruled almost all of France, but by the end of 1453, only the Palace of Calais remained to them. Calais was eventually lost to the French in 1558. The Channel Islands, as a remembrance of the Duchess of Normandy, retained their link to the crown to the present day. All right? Very important. Next paragraph. The first English overseas expansion occurred as early as 1169. Okay? It goes back into the first 100-Year Wars. Okay? The first 100-Year Wars, which also include the Capitan Plantagenet dynasty. All right? The Capitan Plantagenet dynasty rival. All right? They were rivals at that time. All right? The Capitan and Plantagenet rivalry, because it's very important to understand these two houses when we understand what we call the Anglo and French Wars. Okay? The Anglo and French Wars that go back all the way to 7th AD to the 18th, 19th century. Okay? The Anglo and French War. We can't take a look at all of them, but the majority of them we will. The first English overseas expansion occurred as early as 1169 when Norman invasion of Ireland began to establish English possessions in Ireland, with thousands of English Welsh settlers arriving in Ireland. As a result of the lordship of Ireland, this would be Henry II's son, John, was claimed for centuries by the English monarch. However, English control mostly was resigned to an area of Ireland known as the Pale. Most of Ireland, large swaths of Munsters, Ulsters, Connaught remains free English rule until the Tudor Stuart period, which ultimately conspired or transformed into what we call the Scottish diaspora, what we know as the plantation of Ulster, but it was a planned colonization here to what we call North America. Okay, and this territory usually encompasses New Hampshire, Delaware, Connecticut, and New Jersey. All right, for the first colonies and what we call colonial North America, which we're going to talk about in a second. All right. I hope everybody follow along. All right. So we already talked about the Anglo Spear. We already talked about the Anglo English overseas possession. It goes all the way back to Ashton. Okay. Ashton. All right. It goes all the way back to Ashton. Now, if it goes back to Ashton, that means we must understand what Ashton really meant. Okay. Who was the individual? We know he was the grandson of Alfred the Great. All right. We know he was the grandson of Alfred the Great. But what's important about Ashton? Because we know that the English overseas possession in North America in 927 starts with Ashton within the Anglo Sphere, which also includes the territory that they want us to believe that that's where they started from, which we know is a complete lie based off these facts your king about to give to you. Why? Let's go back to the colonial government. Colonial government of the 13th colony. The government of the 13 colonies of British America, not English overseas possession, all right? Not Anglo-Spare, but British America, okay? British America came, grew into what they call the British Empire. Once again, British America grew into what they call the British Empire, which were all influenced under what we call the British Constitution, which gave birth for the United States Constitution. Okay? We must understand that. Don't believe me? Let's read it. The government of the 13 colonies, the first four being New Hampshire, Connecticut, Delaware, and New Jersey. Okay? The government of the 13 colonies of British America developed in the 17th, 18th century under the influence of the British Constitution. All right? After the 13 colonies had become the United States, the experience under the colonial rule would inform and shape the new state's constitution and ultimately the United States Constitution. Right? So that means that this involves the colonies, Articles of Confederation, First, Second Continental Congress, the Confederation, and then the Constitutional Convention of 1787. And that all took place in what state? Pennsylvania. Okay? Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was a proprietary colony. It became a royal colony, but it was a proprietary colony by way of the charter given from Charles II to William Penn. Okay? And it was based upon a process that goes back into Ashington, who was controlling the English overseas possession here in North America before William Penn even came over here. Okay, which we are going to qualify today. I'm not just talking; we're reading. The executive branch. I don't know that. I already know that. Relationship to the British government. By the start of the American Revolution, the 13 colonies had developed political systems featuring the governor exercising executive power in a bicameral legislature made up of a council and an assembly. The system was similar to the British Constitution, which governor corresponds to the British monarch, the council to the House of Lords, and the assembly to the House of Commons. So the governor corresponds to the British monarch, the council, the House of Lords, and the assembly, the House of Commons. So this is a copycat of the parliament under what they call kingly parliament, under the prerogatives of the crown, under his jewel regalia, under his radical title, which concern all the territorial overseas possession involving the King of England, not the British crown, okay? British crown are in question right now in regards to their affiliation with North America as a result of what we call the Second 100-Year War, which resulted from British monarchs and their affiliation, what we call America, what we call Britain and France, which we're talking about in a second. Okay. The 13 colonies were all founded with royal authorization, and authority continued to flow from the monarch as colonial government exercised authority in the king's name. So everything was done in the king's name. A colony's precise relation to the crown depends on whether it was a charter colony, proprietary colony, a royal colony as defined in the colonial charter. Whereas royal colonies belong to the crown, proprietary and charter colonies were granted by the crown to private interests. So that means they became joint stock corporations or corporations through incorporation by way of charter given to them by the monarch who represents the crown. Why? Because the crown is synonymous with crown land, and crown land is personified by the monarch. Okay? We must understand that. If you don't, you're in a world of trouble. Right? So we understand that the colonial government in the 13 colonies was governed by what we call the British Constitution, and the British Constitution is no more than what they call the Bill of Rights of 1689. Okay? The Bill of Rights in 1689. And the Bill of Rights, before we even examine the Bill of Rights, was based off the Claim of Rights of 1689, which resulted from what we call the Glorious Revolution. All right? The Glorious Revolution was a part of what we call the English Civil War and the War of the Three Kingdoms, which were that which resulted from what we call a rump parliament, started from, as we said, Charles I, ended with Oliver Cromwell, and restoration with Charles II. in 1660. And in 1660 is where you had the Federal Tenure Abolition Act, as well as in 1677 when you had the Statute of Frauds, which said that the lottery of Seisen, which was a card way or the ceremonial way of conveying land or estates of land that goes back to Ashton the Great, it was stopped by Charles II under the Rum Parliament, and then required that all contact from thenceforth being what we call writing, which is where you get your original formations of your deed conveyance. Okay, your deed conveyance. We're gonna talk about all that today. All right, we're gonna talk about all that today. Let's get into it. As you can see, territory: Spain, France, and Great Britain. Spain, France, and Great Britain. All those had their Pacific mind. Okay? It's very important for you to understand that. They all had their specific monarchs. They all had their own specific wars. So for order for us to understand how they got over here, we must examine their wars. Okay? Their conflicts, their alliances from the past to the present. All right? We're going from the present to the past, and from the past to the present, because eventually we all get lost. All right? There's no excuse for being lost now. Okay? So let's look at the Anglo-Spanish Wars and the Anglo and Dutch Wars, because we know that North America, before it was called North America, was called what? The Anglo-Spare, right? And we know with the Anglo-Spare, it had to be part of what we call the English overseas possession, but it goes back to Ashton. And when Ashton gave out estates as him being the monarch through Livery of Seisen, it was based off what we call a deed, two ways: livery of deed and livery of law. Okay? There's a reason for this understanding in regards to how these charters, i.e., deeds, were acquired by the colonies who immigrated here to the territory now called America, prior to that called British America, prior to that called the English Empire, which was part of what we call the Anglo-Spare. Okay? The Anglo-Spare, which includes the territory now they call United Kingdom, i.e. Great Britain, i.e. what they want to believe that was called England, which was not. Okay? That's where they immigrated from. Okay? They immigrated there, all right? And they were expelled from there, then were allowed to come back, as we know, through the Battle of Dunbar in 1296 and the Battle of Dunbar in 1650. They were expelled from over here. Then they went over there, and they were expelled from over there. They were allowed to come back over here by way of what we call the restoration of the crown, which we'll talk about in a second. All right, I'm not going to leave one stone unturned. So Spain, French, Great Britain. We can deal with Great Britain later. All right, they last on the scene. Let's go back to Anglo and Spanish War. Anglo and Spanish War. Everybody look at that. All right. Anglo and Spanish Wars. I look at this list. We can't hit all of them. We're going to look at it. Anglo and Spanish Wars, which actually started from the 100-Year War. Okay? The Anglo-Spanish War actually started from what we call the 100-Year War. Includes War of Breton Succession, Castilian Civil War, War of the Two Peters, Portuguese Interregnum. Okay? The Anglo-Spanish War started in the first 100-Year War, okay? You had 200-year wars, all right? We're talking about the first 100-Year Wars. We're not even talking about the second 100-Year War, all right? We must understand the first 100-Year War that started in the 14th century, where you see here. When you get time, you can go back and investigate a little further to get more details and more enlightenment. But there was a whole bunch of wars that lasted over 100 of years, started in 1337 between the Anglo and the Spanish, all right? When you say the Anglo and Spanish War, you're talking about the Anglo spear over here, not over there, because that's not called the Anglo spear. The Anglo spear is over here, and we know that when you're talking about Spanish, Spanish invaded the Anglo spear by way of what we calling it New Spain. Okay? New Spain. Just like the French conquered the territory here in the Anglo spear by calling it New Spain. Parts of New France. All right? We know New France was ruled by the Kingdom of France, and New Spain was ruled by the Kingdom of Spain. All right? But they were ruling over colonies over here because the British is not in the picture. All right? They don't come into the picture until 16th, 17th century. All right? So we're disqualifying everybody. All right? The Anglo-Spanish War over here, dealing with New Spain, started from the 100-Year War of 1337 to 1453. We'll talk about the 100-Year War in a second, but just look at the length of wars that took place between 1337 and going into what we call the War of the Roses. All right? The War of the Roses. Anglo-Spanish War. All right? Just look, we're going to just let you look at them real quick. All the war with Spain. We're going to stop at the Treaty of Paris of 1763. Right here, y'all. Anglo-Spanish War, Treaty of Paris, 1763. Anglo-Spanish War, 1779, 1783. All right? It's right here. Right here. All the wars between Anglo and Spanish took place from 13th century to the 18th century, as you can see displayed here on the wars governing the Anglo and French. We're all part of what we call the 100-Year War. All right? The 100-Year War. The second 100-Year War, the second 100 Years War don't start till we get into what we call the Glorious Revolution. All right? That's the second part of the 100-Year Wars, which were a bunch of wars. Contrast to the first 100-Year War with a bunch of wars, starting from the first 100-Year War, okay, which we'll now investigate, okay? The 100-Year War, 1337, 1453, was a series of armed conflicts fought between the Kingdom of England and France during the late Middle Ages. It emerged from feudal disputes over the Duchess of Aquitaine and was triggered by a claim to the French throne made by Edward I, the Third of England. The war grew into a broader military, economic, and political struggle involving factions from across Western Europe, fueled by emerging nationalism on both sides. The periodization of the war typically charts it as taking place over 116 years. However, it was an intermediate conflict which was frequently interrupted by extent factors such as the Black Death and several years of truces. Okay? First 100-Year War between Edward III. Okay? We can see the parties, the belligerents, territory, France, Low Countries, Great Britain, the Iberian Peninsula. Look where all these wars are taking place at, y'all. We overlook this stuff. territory lost all continental possessions except for the Pale of Colonies. We read that. Okay. The term 100-Year War was adopted by later historians as historiographical periodization to encompass dynastically related conflicts, constructing the longest military conflict in European history. The war is commonly divided into 3 phases, separated by truces. Edward I War, the Caroline War, the Lancastrian War. Remember that. The Edwardian War, the Caroline War, and the Lancastrian War. We're talking about the cadet branches of the plantation crown, the Yorks and the Lancasters. Did y'all hear that? Which encompassed the 100-Year War, okay? Which were part of the Anglo and Spanish Wars. So the Anglo-Spanish Wars was a result of the 100-Year Wars that were affiliated between the cadet branches of the plantation crown, the Edwards War and the Lancastrian War, as well as the Caroline War, okay? Each side drew many allies into conflict, with English forces initially prevailing. However, the French forces under the House of Berlioz ultimately retained control of the Kingdom of France. The French and English monarchies thereafter remained separate, despite the monarchies of England, later Britain, styling themselves as sovereign of France until 1802. Okay? All right, so at this time, this is a result of what we call winds up to what we call the War of the Roses, okay, which we'll talk about in a second. But we want to investigate the Anglo and French wars because we're dealing with the Anglo-Spanish War, right? We talk about the Anglo-Spanish Wars, and look what involved: the belligerents, Kingdom of France, loyal to the House of Berlioz. These are all Frankish kings, supported by the Burgundian states, Duchess of Brittany, Crown of Castile, Kingdom of Scotland, Welsh rebels, Republic of Genova, Kingdom of Bohemia, Crown of Aragon, and Papacy. Everyone see that? Versus the Kingdom of England, the Kingdom of France. All right? So that means that the Kingdom of France are not the same as the Kingdom of France, who are Frankish kings, because the Kingdom of France fighting with England are those who descended down from Gothic, the fifth caliban Jew. Because as you read it, it says the Kingdom of England, the Kingdom of France, loyal to the House of Plantagenet, supported by Burgundian states, Duchess of Brittany, Kingdom of Portugal, Kingdom of Norway, Duchess of Gascony, Ghent rebels, and Papal states, under the command of Philip IV, Philip VI, and Edward III. We know Edward III was the son of Edward II, the son of Edward I, Edward I was the son of Henry III, the son of Henry II, the son of Godfrey, the fifth caliban Jew, son of Folk, ruler of Jerusalem. Okay? So there we see the Anglo and Spanish wars taking place here on what? The Anglo Spear, which English holdings goes back to Ashton the Great. Remember I said that. Ashton, because that's where the archaic ceremonial practice came from, which was incorporated in New Jersey. Okay? Let's see. See a little bit right here. The origins of the 100-Year War. The root cause, I like that word, root. The root cause of conflict can be traced to the crisis of the 14th century. The outbreak of war was motivated by gradual rises in tension between the kings of France and England over territory. The official pretext was the interruption of the direct male line of the Capetan dynasty. Did y'all hear that? Tension between the French and English crown had gone back centuries to the origin of the English royal family, which was French, Norman, and later Angevin, and origins through William the Conqueror. The Norman duke became King of England in 1066. English monarchs held their historically held titles and lands within France, which made them vassals to the kings of France. The status of the English king French fiefs were significant sources of conflict between the two monarchies throughout the Middle Ages. French monarchy systematically sought to check the growth of the English power, stripping away lands as the opportunity arose, mainly whenever England was at war within Scotland, an ally of France. Did you hear that? English holdings in France had varied in size at some point, dwarfing even French royal domain by 1337. However, only Gascony was in England. So as we can see, covering the 100-Year War involving the Anglo and Spanish wars, here on the Anglo-Sphere, you see that we have a direct interest in that land and an equitable interest in that land when it involved the 100-Year War, which was established by England's King Edward III. Okay, versus the the Spanish kings who colonized North America. Okay, as you can see under colonial government in North America. Let's go back to it. Does that make sense to everybody? Somebody say yes or no. Just disqualify Spain here in the Anglosphere, right? We disqualify Spain. We know Spain denotes to Moor, Spanish Moor, okay? If you want to go to French Moor, we're going to disqualify them too as well, because the Anglos were Anglo-Saxon Berbers who are not Frankish nor Spanish descendants. They might have had alliances through marriages, but that's basically the scale of it. Okay? Did everyone get that understanding about New Spain under the Kingdom of Spain who colonized the Anglosphere? Everyone copy. Are y'all asleep out there? Somebody say something. I'm suspense from House Suspense. You there, Noble? Can y'all hear me? Is anyone copy? Testing. Anyone out there? All right, so we disqualify Anglo and Spanish wars here in the Anglosphere because it's not the Spanish sphere, it's the Anglosphere, and the Anglosphere encompasses English overseas possessions, goes back before Spanish influence in the Anglosphere. Okay, it goes back with the Spanish king. All right, that don't come into their alliances with the Plantagenet crown, which we prove that originated with at the what we call the 100-Year War. Okay, now let's look at what we call the Anglo and French War. Anglo-French Wars. Right over here, not over there in Europe on the Iberian Peninsula, not over in what they call Great Britain, Ireland. We're talking about right here in North America, the Anglo-French War. We already disqualified the Spanish interest here in the lands here called North America because it's well within the Anglosphere. Okay, now we're talking about the French, Frankish, the one who made the alliance with American in 1778. All right, on the Franco-American alliance. All right, those were the inhabitants who inhabited the New France, under the kingdom of New France. All right, through their colonization here in what we call North America. Thank you, Countess Middleton. I don't know where everybody else at. Look at the Anglo-Spanish Wars. here in the Anglosphere, which was what we said a part of the 100-Year Wars, the first 100-Year Wars. But now we're looking at the Anglo-French Wars here in North America, based off the story, the narrative we're going to get here. Anglo-French Wars, not the Anglo-Spanish War, the Anglo-French Wars now, were a series of conflicts between the territories of the Kingdom of England and the successor states, the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of France, succeeded by a republic. All right? Their conflict spans throughout the Middle Ages to the modern age. We must understand that. So from 1109 to 1815, you had the Anglo-French Wars and you had the Anglo-Spanish Wars in the 14th century. Okay? All over here in North America. All right? And the land called now North America. All right? Let's understand what's taking place. Middle Ages. High Middle Ages. Between the conflict between England and France, because it says Anglo and France war. England and France are not the same in regards to the parties are involved. Okay, they do have an alliance based off the parties involved, but the parties involved in that the conflict and alliances are two societies, one of noble and one of Viking descent. We must understand that, right? Because it says the Middle Ages, in regards to the Anglo-French War, starts with the Capitan Planetary rivalry. 1109, 1113, first conflict between the Capitan dynasty and the House of Normandy and post-Norman conquest. So we're not arguing with the Spanish. We're arguing with the Franks of the Capitan dynasty, as well as the House of Normandy, where William the Conqueror came from. All right, which the Jews were down with it. Okay, we dealing with all this back there in the 12th century, 1109 to 1113. But everyone agree with me. Okay, so this is before the 100 Years. We know that this Anglo-Spanish War started with the first 100 Year War, all right, and the 14th century. We know that the Anglo-French Wars started in the 12th century, as we see here between the Capitan Planetary, all right? And not only we won with the Capitan, which are Frankish, Franco, but also the House of Normandy, okay? Which where William the Conqueror descended down from, okay? William the Conqueror descended down from. So let's see the conflict that Anglo descendants are having here in the Anglosphere in regard to the Anglo French wars that are involving the Capitan dynasty and the House of Normandy, because they're both put under the category of Frankish descent, Capitan and the House of Normandy. So who are these houses? Capitan dynasty started by House Capet in 987, if I'm not mistaken. In 87, Capitan dynasty, all right? Also known as the House of France, is a dynasty of European origin and a branch of the Robertians and Carlegians. Okay? Carlings, right? We see that. The Capetine, also known as the House of France, is a dynasty of European origin and a branch of Robertians and Carlings. It is among the largest, oldest royal houses in Europe in the world, consists of Hugh Capet, the founder of the dynasty, and his male line descendants who ruled France without interruption from 987 to 1792. Okay? That's the Capetine dynasty. Now, and they said that the Capetine dynasty were part of what we call the Robertinian dynasty, all right, which are not the Plantagenet descendants, all right, who were aligned with the Kingdom of England going back to the kings of the Wessex, all right? You must understand that. So who is the House of Normandy? It goes back into Rollo, i.e. the Robertians. The House of Normandy designates the noble family which originated with the Duchess of Normandy, whose members were Dukes of Normandy, Counts of Orleans, as well as Kings of England. Following the Norman conquest of England, that deals with William the Conqueror, it lasted until Stephen of French, the House of Blois, seized the Duchess of Normandy in 1135. The house emerged from the union between the Viking Rollo, first ruler of Normandy, and Pope Beas, a Welsh Frankish noblewoman. William the Conqueror and his heirs down through 1135 were members of this dynasty. Do everybody see the connection? Okay? Do everybody see the connection? All right? And the House of Normandy lasted until 1135. 1135. Why is this important? So, right? As we can see here, going back to the Anglo and French Wars here in the Anglosphere, and not Anglo and Spanish War here in the Anglosphere. Because we know that the Anglo-Spanish War resulted from the 100-Year War, okay, which is in the 13th century. The Anglo-French War goes back to the 12th century, going back to the Capetine houses of Normandy, which involved William the Conqueror and the Capetine dynasty, which goes back to the Frankish and Franco kings. All right. So let's just take a look down to the history dealing with the Anglo and French wars, starting with the Capetine Planetary rivalry, which didn't come to an end till 1259 with the Treaty of Paris of 1759. 1259. So the Treaty of Paris of 1763 with the kings of the Franks, who gave the territory called New Spain and New France to Great Britain, didn't have the authority to do so because there was already a treaty in Paris already in place back in 1259 that ended the Capetine Planetary rivalry, which resulted in the Anglo-French War of the Capetine dynasty and the House of Normandy, which are all one family. Okay, we must understand that. So let's trace this Anglo-French War from the Capetine and the House of Normandy, which William the Conqueror descended down from, to what we call North America, based off the Anglo and French War, like we did the Anglo and Spanish War here in the Anglosphere, because it all says Anglo, right? It says Anglo and French War, not French and Anglo War. Because if it said French and Anglo War, then we'd be over in the French territory, which we call Europe. We're not. It says Anglo and French War. All right. We know France is a territory over there versus here in the Anglosphere, because here it's not called the French sphere. It's not called that. It's not called the Scottish sphere. It's not called the French sphere. It's not called the Irish sphere. It's not called Great Britain sphere. It's called the Anglo sphere, which encompasses the territories going all the way back to, as we said, Ashton. Okay? Ashton. As we see here, you see Anglo-French War 1123, 1135. So that means that the Duchess of Normandy, or i.e., what they said it was called, the House of Normandy, ended in 1135. Why? Because that ended in what we call the anarchy. Okay? You know what the anarchy was, right? The anarchy was a result of William Allen dying in the White Ship, who was the son of Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, who invaded England with the Capitan dynasty through the Capitan planetary rivalry, as we see here in 1109 to 1113, here in what we call the Anglo sphere. Okay, the Anglo sphere. All right, here you see all the ancestors of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, son Henry II, son of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou. Richard, John. All we second we get to the 100-Year War. Right here. This involved what we call the Anglo and French War here in North America, called the Anglosphere. So we then trace the Anglo and French wars from the 12th century back to from the Capitan Plantagenet War to the 100-Year War that involves the Anglo and Spanish War here in the Anglosphere, which ultimately results in what we call the Edwardian War, the Lancastrian War, which ultimately called the War of the Roses. All right, the War of the Roses. Do y'all see the link? Right. Now you got the modern period, the second 100-Year War. We can't even get into the second 100-Year War yet until we go into the War of the Roses. All right? Until we go into the War of Roses, because that all occurred from the first 100-Year War, starting with the Anglo-French War, then resulted in the Anglo-Spanish War through the 100-Year War, which resulted in what we call the War of the Roses between the Yorks and the Lancaster branches of the cadet branches of the Angevin crown, which was under the authority of the Plantagenet crown, which was founded by Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem. Okay? Facts. Undisputed facts. We haven't even gotten to the evidentiary proof right here. Everything I'm doing is used based on Wikipedia, which is the picture I'm painting. Okay? We got the laws here to validate it, but we're going to get to some evidentiary proof. Okay? Not yet, but we will. Okay? So now we done covered the Anglosphere. We done covered the colonial government that encompasses Great Britain, which is not even a question at this point in time, because we first must deal with the Spanish and the French occupation here in North America, called New Spain and New France. New Spain and New France is ruled by the Kingdom of France and the Kingdom of France, and we know that they go back to the Anglo-French War and the Anglo-Spanish War, and we know that the Anglo and French War precede them both. All right, precede them both, but we know that they are connected as a result of them being part of the 100-Year War. All right, which ended in started what we call the War of the Roses. Okay, because the War of the Roses was a conflict between who? The Lancaster branch and the York branch. Let's just get a view on that real quick. Here in the Anglosphere, not over there, over here. They got a Battle of Bosworth, which is in Pennsylvania, just like you got a York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. All right, we're going to discuss that as well, because that is fraudulent, how they want us to believe that the name York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania were named by people who we named them, when that's a complete lie, because we know that the territory called Pennsylvania was territorial subject to the charter given by the crown. We know that crown was Charles II, who was restored to the crown through the English Restoration, which was under the de facto authority governed under what they call, what it's called, y'all? What y'all want to call it? The Glorious Revolution. Right? The Glorious Revolution. We're going to talk about that. I don't believe we got this. We only got this many views. All right. War of the Roses. War of the Roses, known at the time in the following centuries as the Civil Wars, were a series of civil wars fought over control over the English throne from 1455 to 1487. So this is after the first 100-Year Wars. All right, going all the way back to the 12th century with the Capitan Plantagenet. All right, this is after that. This is called the War of the Roses or the Civil War, which was over after the anarchy. Okay, after the anarchy, after Godfrey's Fifth Count of Anjou descendants, all right, they were at war. It says that the War of the Roses known at the time in the following century as the Civil War, where a series of civil wars fought over the control over the English throne from 1455 to 1487. The wars were fought between the supporters of the House of Lancaster and the House of York, two rival cadet branches of the royal house of Planetary. Did you hear that? The conflict resulted in the end of Lancaster's male line. In 1471, enabled the Tudor family to inherit their claim to the throne through the female line. You hear that? Through the female line, not the male line, not through patrilineal descent, not through agnatic succession, all right, but through matrilineal descent through what they call partout sepulture Beatrice, all right? Conflict was largely brought to an end upon the union of the two houses through the marriage created by the Tudor dynasty that was subsequently ruled England. This was called the Treaty of Perpetual Union. Okay, the Treaty of Perpetual Union. As a result of the War of the Roses, resulted in the creation of the House of Tudors by Henry VII and King James IV with his marriage to Margaret of Tudor. All right. So let's look at the what we call the Treaty of Perpetual Peace before we go to the House of Tudors. Here in the Anglosphere. The Treaty of Perpetual Peace was signed by James IV of Scotland and Henry VII of England in 1502. It agreed to end the intermittent warfare between Scotland and England, which had been waged over the previous 200 years, and although it failed in this respect, the hostilities continued intermittently throughout the 16th century and led to the Union of the Crown in 1603, which led to the Treaty of Union in 1707, which resulted from the Glorious Revolution and the Bill of Rights of 1689 and the Claim of Right of 1689. Okay? We must understand that. I'm not just talking about it. I'm going to qualify. So we see that the Treaty of Perpetual Peace between Margaret of Tudor and King James IV resulted in the perpetual peace between the House of Tudors and the Scottish kings. All right? Which eventually broke. Okay? It was eventually broken. Let's see. Here. The treaty was broken in 1513 when James declared war on England in support of the French who had lately been attacked by England. James was acting according to the Scotland obligation to the Anglo and French parts up to the obligation to France under the older mutual defense treaty, the Order Alliance, which is Scottish, which is part of what we call the Anglo and French War. Okay, the Order Alliance was part of the Anglo and French War, called the alliance between Scotland and France, right? Scotland and France in 1290. James was excommunicated by Pope Leo X and the English Cardinal Bangbridge for breaking his sworn treaty with England. The subsequent invasion of the Scots met defeat when James was killed on the 9th of September 1513 at the Battle of Florida in Northumberland. Okay? Northumberland. You must understand that. So the War of the Roses was the result of the 100-Year Wars, and which resulted from the Anglo-Spanish Wars and the Anglo-French Wars here in North America before they were overthrown by the colonial government of migrants or immigrants who immigrated here based off what we call the doctrine of discovery or prescription of sovereignty or acquisition of sovereignty by way of rivalries, war. Okay? I have proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's go to the House of Tudors. House of Tudors was an English Welsh dynasty that held the throne from England to 1485 to 1603. You know, 1603 was the Union of the Crown. All right? The Treaty of Union was in 1707, parts up. Yeah, the Treaty of Union was in 1707. The Union of the Crown was in 1603, and the Treaty of Perpetual Peace was in 1502. with the result of the marriage of Margaret of Tudor and Henry and King James IV, the King of Scotland. Okay, and this gave way to the creation of what we call the House of Tudors. Let's read it in the first paragraph. House of Tudors, let me just continue going. They descended from the Tudors of Pendermint, a Welsh noble family, in Catherine of Balios, a Frankish queen. The Tudor monarchs ruled the Kingdom of England and the lordships of Ireland, later the Kingdom of Ireland. Okay, we know who was the lordships of Ireland, John and his descendants. It stopped with Henry VII. Okay, the lordship of Ireland started with John and ended with Henry VII as a result of them taking over the cadet branches that were established by John, John, the son of Henry II, the son of Godfrey the Count of Anjou, the son of Fulk, the ruler of Jerusalem. Okay, so the Tudor monarchs ruled the Kingdom of England and the lordship of Ireland, later called the Kingdom of England, for 118 years with 5 monarchs: Henry VII, Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. The Tudors succeeded the House of Planetary. You didn't succeed, you conquered and took over the House of Planetary through the cadet branches, which was the York and Lancaster branch of the cadet branches of the Angevin crown. The Tudors succeeded the House of Planetary as rulers of the Kingdom of England and were succeeded by the Scottish House of Stuart by the authority of the Treaty of Union, the Treaty of Perpetual Peace. Okay? You ain't fooling nobody. The first Tudor monarch, Henry VII, descended through his mother from the House of Beaufort, a legitimized branch of the English Royal House of Lancaster, a cadet house of the Plantagenets. The Tudor family rose to power and started the Tudor period in the wake of the War of the Roses, which left the main house of Lancaster, with which the Tudors were aligned, extinct in the male line. You hear that? So we see that the Tudors came as a result of the War of the Roses, and the War of the Roses were part of the 100-Year Wars that encompasses the kings of France and the kings of Spain. Okay, all encompassing the territory we know as New Spain and New France under the Kingdom of Spain and the Kingdom of France here in what we call the Anglo-Sphere. Okay, called the Anglo-Sphere. All right. So the Treaty of Perpetual Peace led to the Union of the Crown, the Treaty of Union, all right, which is 1707. All right. All that depends upon the Glorious Revolution. All right. The Glorious Revolution. And that goes into what we call the Second 100-Year War. We covered the first 100-Year War, which was the time of covering the Anglo-French and Anglo-Spanish Wars, which was the wars known as the 100-Year Wars, which led to what we call the War of the Roses, which involved the Yorks and the Lancaster branch, which broke down in the conflict, which allowed the House of Tudors to take over the Lancaster branch by succeeding through a female line, such as a male heir, which was lacking in the Lancaster branch, but ultimately allowed for the House of Stuart to get their start by way of the marriage of King James IV and Margaret of Tudor, all right, which gave birth to King James I, right? King James I, and we know King James I perpetuated what we call the plantation of Ulster, which was a colonization, immigration, migration plan that was actually an extension from what was established from Edward I, going all the way back to when they colonized Ireland and Wales, okay, of the conquest of Ireland and Wales. All right, we must understand that. I talked about that in previous lectures. If you didn't view it, please go back and watch that lecture. All right, so now we're talking about the Second 100-Year Wars, which were a series of wars that preceded the first 100-Year Wars, which were a series of wars governing the Anglo-French Wars, the Anglo-Spanish Wars, which involved the 100-Year Wars and the War of the Roses here in the Anglo-Sphere, before we even get into the colonial government here in the Anglo-Sphere. Okay? We must understand what's going on. Let's get it right, y'all. Second 100-Year War, which was also part of the Anglo French Wars. The Anglo-French Wars were composed of the Anglo-French Wars, this Anglo and Spanish Wars. All right, that took place in the first 100-Year Wars. But now we're talking about the second 100-Year Wars, still involving the Anglo and French Wars. Okay, still involving the Anglo-French Wars. We know it do because you have the Franco-American alliance, which is part of the second 100-Year Wars. Okay, let's look at it. Any questions, anyone, before I move forward? Any questions before I move forward? Anybody there? Once again, is anybody there? Anybody there? Anybody listen? Everybody on the same page with what's being taught today. If you don't answer, and if you do answer, I am going to hold you accountable. I'm going to hold you accountable. Do everyone understand? Last response I got was from Countess Middleton. Okay, let's continue. As everyone is on the same page. The Second 100-Year War is the periodization of historical era term used by some historians to describe a series of military conflicts around the globe between Great Britain and France that occurred from about 1689, or some say 1714, to 1815, including several separate wars such as the War of Spanish Succession, War of Austrian Succession, Seven-Year War, and the American Revolutionary War, and the Napoleonic War. Did everyone hear that? Did everyone hear that? Still involving Spain, still involving France. Okay, all right, and they're now taking on the 7-Year War and the American Revolutionary War, as well as the Napoleonic Wars, all can be considered part of the second 100-Year Wars, where was the conflict of wars taking place on not just on one continent, but on multiple continents. All right. It said describes a serious military conflict around the globe between Great Britain and France that occurred from 1689 to 1815, including several separate wars such as the War of the Spanish Succession, War of the Austrian Succession, Seven-Year War, American Revolutionary War, and the Napoleonic War. The Second 100-Year War is renamed after the 100-Year War. At the 100-Year War, this term does not describe a single military event, but a persistent general state of war between two primary belligerents. The use of phrases in overarching category indicates the interrelation of all the wars or components of the rivalry between France and Britain for world power. It was a war between and over the future of East States colonial empire. Did y'all hear that? Look at the belligerents. William III, Queen Mary, Queen Anne, King George II, and King George III against Frankish kings. So these are Scottish, British kings against Frankish kings. All right? These are the belligerents over here fighting in what we call the Anglo-Sphere. The Anglo-Sphere. It's very important for you to understand that. The Anglo-Sphere, because it mentioned the American Revolution. That's part of what we call the Franco-American Alliance. Okay? The Franco-American Alliance. But let's go to the Glorious Revolution. All right? Since the Second 100-Year Wars started in 1689. Okay? Let's deal with the Glorious Revolution. Glorious Revolution and the series of events that led to the disposition of James II and the 7th of Scotland in November 1688. He was replaced by his daughter Mary II and his Dutch husband William III of Orange, who was also his nephew. The two ruled a joint monarchy of England, Scotland, and Ireland until Mary's death in 1694. The revolution itself was relatively bloodiless, but pro-Stuart revolts between 1689 and 1746 causes significant casualties by the political movement known as Jacobitism persisted in the late 18th century. William invasion was the last successful invasion of England. Okay? All right, so this is the result of the Glorious Revolution, which is what they call the Second 100-Year Wars. Starting with James II and the 7th of Scotland. And we know James II descended down from Charles I, who descended down from King James I, who started the what we call Scottish diaspora here, what we call North America. Okay, so what is the Bill of Rights, which originated as a result of the Glorious Revolution? Because we know the Bill of Rights was the constitution for the British government under the colonial government here in North America when Great Britain got here. Okay, when Great Britain got here through the Second 100-Year War, they wasn't here around the First 100-Year War. It wasn't even an imagination. All right, they never existed. They didn't come about until the House of Tudors took over through the War of the Roses that was taking place right here in what we call the Anglo-Sphere. Right here. All right? Bill of Rights. Since the 100-Year Wars was started in 1689, all right? So that's when the Bill of Rights was established as well, 1689. And that was this was to see who would inherit the throne, the English throne. The Bill of Rights in 1689, known as the Bill of Rights of 1688, is an act of England that set out certain basic rights and clarified who would be the next to inherit the crown. It remains a crucial statute of English constitutional law. So the Bill of Rights under the Glorious Revolution, under the Second 100-Year Wars involving Britain and Frankish kings, not the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, who was the original king of the territory called the Anglo-Sphere, going all the way back to the Anglo-French Wars through the first 100-Year Wars that we were never told about. This is the result of it, which we call the Bill of Rights of 1689, which was who would decide who would inherit the English throne by the de facto monarch under one parliament, under what they call a commonwealth, which is a republic, which you call now. Okay, this was a direct result of that. We must understand that. So the Bill of Rights was based upon what? A claim of rights. Claim of rights, right? The Claim of Rights is an act passed by the Convention of the States, a sister body to the Parliament of Scotland, in April 1689. It was one of the key documents of the United Kingdom's constitutional law and Scotland's constitutional law. So we know that the Claim of Rights and the Bill of Rights was a result of the background, which states that in the Glorious Revolution, William Orange invaded England, landing with his Dutch army in England on the 5th of November, 1688. King James VII of Scotland, who was also King of England and Ireland as James II, attempted to resist the invasion. He then sent representatives to negotiate, and he finally fled England on the 23rd of December, 1688. While the Convention of Parliament in England declared that James, as King of England, had abdicated the government and issued an English Bill of Rights, which is the Bill of Rights of 1689, right? 1689, on February 13th, 1689, offered the crown of England to William and Mary. Did you hear that? Offering the crown of England to William and Mary, the Scots found themselves facing a more difficult constitutional problem. As James had not been present in Scotland during the crisis and had now fled from Scotland territory in December, it would be highly dubious to claim that he had abdicated the Scottish throne. So as we can see, through the English Bill of Rights of 1689, by way of the Claim of Right of 1689, by way of the Glorious Revolution between Great Britain and France, which resulted by way of what we call the Treaty of Paris of 1763. Okay, the Treaty of Paris of 1763. All right. Now we must understand that the Great Britain's right, all right, known as the Stuart's right to the land or the English estate, originated from the House of Tudors. All right, and the House of Tudors claim in the estate originated by way of conquest in the cadet branch of the Lancaster branch of the cadet branch of the Angevin crown, which is descended from the Planetary crown on the Godfrey V kind of Anjou, son of Foe. So why is this important, y'all? Why is this important? Let's see. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was the fourth state to incorporate. New Hampshire, Connecticut, Delaware, then New Jersey, then Pennsylvania. Lancaster is a city and a county seat at Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and one of the oldest inland cities in the United States. Did you hear that, y'all? One of the oldest cities. Let's go to history. See that rose? See that rose, y'all? That's a red rose. All right? Red rose. Originally called Hickorytown, the city was renamed after the English city. One second. Originally called Hickorytown, the city was renamed after the English city of Lancaster by native John Wright. A symbol, the red rose, is from the House of Lancaster. Lancaster, part of 1681 Penn's Woods Charter of William Penn. Okay, so Lancaster, which is a city in Lancaster County or Lancastershire, named after Lancaster in England, all right, was part of the charter given to William Penn. Okay, did y'all hear that? During the American Revolution, Lancaster served one day as the temporary capital in the United States. So Lancaster served as the temporary capital during the American Revolution when the United States government or colonial government under the Articles of Confederation, the first and second Continental Congress, then became Confederation, and then they created their Constitutional Convention of 1787 in the capital of Pennsylvania called Lancaster. Okay, we read it for ourselves. All right, very important. That's just Lancaster. All right. Then it said the revolutionary government then moved still further away to York, Pennsylvania. Okay. The revolutionary government then moved still further away to York, Pennsylvania. I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about everybody else, Countess Middleton. Right? Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Considered part of William Penn's charter. All right. And the symbol of it is a red rose. All right. Red rose. Let's go to York, Pennsylvania. York is the city of the county seat of York County, Yorkshire, Pennsylvania, United States, located in south central Pennsylvania. All right. Go down to the next paragraph. Founded in 1741, York served as a temporary base for the Continental Congress from September 1777 to June 1778, during which the Articles of Confederation were drafted. Did you hear that? So the Articles of Confederation was drafted in York, Pennsylvania. All right? York, Pennsylvania. And York, Pennsylvania is named after York, of the branch of the cadet branch of the Planetary Crown, just like Lancaster, Pennsylvania is named after Lancaster branch of the Planetary Crown. Okay, and these territories were actually part of what we call William Penn's Charter. All right, William Penn's Charter. William Penn claimed the territory called Pennsylvania based off a charter given to him by Charles II. Okay. Charles II gave the charter to William Penn, just like Charles II gave the charter to George Carteret and John Berkeley for the territory called Delaware and New Jersey. But guess what? All those territories were surrendered back to the crown. Why? Because it became a royal colony of the crown, okay? Under the English throne. We must understand that. Let's get to the meat and greedy that where I'm trying to go with that. Go with this, let's just say. You know that the English overseas possession here in North America in the Anglosphere, I'm not going back to open up other tabs that I showed when I first started this lesson as a result of the lack of participation I have here on in class today. All right. It's very important that you participate, because if you don't, once again, I'm gonna hold you accountable. Okay. So livery of seisin is a way of conveying property under the common law. All right. And it's subject to the statute of frauds in regards to proof of that contract in lieu of conveyance of property. All right. In lieu of the grantor and the grantee. All right. And we're talking about property here and what we call the Anglosphere. Nowhere else but here in the Anglosphere, which encompasses or denotes what we call the English seed overseas possession that were goes back to what we call ascertain of 927. Okay, 927. Livery of seisin is an archaic legal conveyancing ceremony formerly practiced in Feudal England and other countries following English common law, used to convey holdings of property. Y'all better be listening. The term livery is closely related to the synonymous with delivery used in some jurisdictions and contract law. Contract makes law. Unconscionable contract don't make law. Majority of the contracts that you have here are unconscionable, and therefore you have no remedy because you agreed to the unconscionability of a contract. All right, versus a lawful contract between two people who are able to contract based upon what is being contract, and that's something in lieu of what we call a conveyance. And the highest form of conveyance is what we call property. Okay, the highest form of conveyance in lieu of livery of seisin based off English land law, going back to Atherton, was based upon the conveyance of property as established by Atherton, because we know Atherton means noble stone. Okay, livery of seisin is an archaic legal conveyancing ceremony formerly practiced in feudal England and other countries following the English common law, used to convey, transfer, dispose of holdings and property. The term livery closely relates to, if not synonymous with delivery, used in some jurisdictions, and contract law. Contracts make law, or the related law of deeds. Okay, the oldest form of common law provides that a valid conveyance of feudal tenure in land requires physical transfer by the transferor to the transferee to the presence in the presence of a witness of a piece of ground itself, in the literal sense of a hand to hand passing of the amount of soil, twig, key to a building or that land or other token. Okay, delivery of a possession. All right, and we're talking about possession of delivery of property known as land here in North America. Who has a valid claim to have the land conveyed back to the original grantor based off the English common law? None of you can use the English common law because you're not English. When I say English, I'm talking about Anglo. English and Anglo is different because English denotes to the English kings who were de facto ruling the Anglo-sphere here in what we call North America. As a result of you lacking and misunderstanding the language denoting to North America. All right, and the conveyance of how North America got his start in regards to the land deeds given to those who occupy the land now. With this information, you are unable to make that distinction. So the varieties of the way that livery of seisin, which is the original form of where the deed originated from, was due two ways. Livery in the deed, whereby the parties meet together on the land and transfer symbolically, deliver possession of the land by handing over a twig or a clump of earth to the recipient. Okay, this now is what you call a deed. All right, because of the contract law that was created by the Statutes of Frauds by Charles II, who abolished livery of seisin, which was the ancient practice going back to Atherton. Okay, yes, Atherton, the grandson of Alfred the Great. All right, two ways: livery deed, whereby the parties meet together on the land, and the transfer symbolically deliver possession of the land by handing over a twig or a clump of earth to the recipient. Or the second one, livery in law. All right, I'm using this. This is applicable to me, whereby the parties went within sight of the land, and the transferor, i.e., the grantor, declared to the recipient that possession was being given, followed by a recipient entering onto the land. So this is either done by two ways, either a will or by operation of law. A will or by operation of law. So how do we determine by will or operation of law, or by way of what we call unlawful conveyance, which is called an easement? Because majority of, if it's not a will, is by way of easement, which is a right to use property that you do not own. And usually that comes in the form of a lease, a deed, which is an instrument in lieu of conveyance, but does not prove ownership, because no one can prove that the one who conveyed it was the actual owner in question, right? This is why the Statute of Frauds was created in the first place by Charles II in 1677, because he abolished feudal tenure in 1660. That meant the land is solodio and feudal tenure has been abolished. He knew the land didn't belong to him. He knew that. That's why the feudal tenures were abolished. And the only one that can get it was by the king himself, because the land was entailed for a legal heir, which is going to only be transferred by way of primogeniture. If it's not, then it falls under what we call inquisition post-mortem. How many of you heard of that term? How many of you know what that term means? All right, I'm pretty sure none of you do. William Penn didn't know about it. New Jersey Commission of Law Review didn't know about it. Why? Because they're going to be busted. Let's see. The legend. This is not a legend, right? We're not even going to deal with the legend. Let's do it with the ceremonial. Listen, this is under the Second 100-Year War. The Second 100-Year War, which started in 1689 with the Glorious Revolution, the Bill of Rights of 1689, the Claimant Right of 1689, which gave birth to what we call the Treaty of Union in 1707, okay? Which is what the twerk and twig ceremony was. This is how the twerk and twig ceremony was stolen by way of a Scottish monarch under the British monarch, Charles II. All right, let's prove it. Here's the evidence. Land place of William Penn, near here, October 27, 1682. William Penn first stepped on America's soil. He proceeded to fort and perform livery of Seisen. He took the key thereof. We did deliver unto him and turf with a twig upon it and a porringer with river water and salt and part of all. Okay, so that's the language you see in the actual plaque for itself. Plaque. Okay, but the conveyance based off the ceremonial conveyance of land under the livery and Seisen ceremony was fraudulent because of the individuals who are using it, and these are Scottish monarchs, by way of what we call the British Crown after the 1707 term British unification. Okay? So it says the turf and twig ceremony date from the feudal era, but was used regularly in early colonial America, allowing the English, Scottish, after 1707 term the British, by virtue of their monarch's claims, to take sovereign possession over unclaimed land. That's called abandoned property. It's called vacatina, abandoned property. The process has taken several forms over the year. Okay, this is called eminent domain. Okay, so you got it right there. There's your source. So we read here in its entirety that the feudal era is where the turf and twig ceremony came from. We know that Charles II abolished the feudal tenure through the Feudal Tenure Abolition Act in 1660. Okay? He abolished all the feudal tenure. So that means that there are no more estates in land. That means that nobody should have in their possession an instrument denoting to a deed of ownership. No one should have it in their possession. If you do, you are in a world of trouble. You're in a world of trouble. Why? Because this is the Anglo-spirit from English deeds over possession that goes back to the time of the Anglo-Saxon Berber kings, Ashelton. He wasn't the English king because the English kings came in with William the Conqueror when they invaded England. All right? When they invaded England. Let's look at the ceremony from Malmesbury. Malmesbury is in Wiltshire, England, okay? Wiltshire, England. It says the lucky new commoner, based off the archaic ceremony, goes to his given acre and cut a turf from a selected site and drop 2 shillings in the whole made. The high steward of the county then twitches him with a twig and stick and twig in a turf, then hands it to him by saying, "This turf and twig I give to thee, as free as Ashelton has gave to me, and hope a loving brother thou wilt be." The high steward then takes the money out of the hole, and the new landowner replaces the turf. Okay, So we see that William Penn, okay, William Penn, who received land by way of a twig and turf ceremony, that which was not the ceremony of his ancestors. William Penn was a Scottish Protestant who immigrated to North America based off a charter given to him by a Scottish king, Charles II, who passed the 15th Abolition Act in 1660, which nullified void the twig and turf ceremony that William Penn used to take the territory now called Pennsylvania, which encompassing York and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which are actually territorial going back to the territories that actually belonged to England when it was ruled by the kings of England, the founders of the Yorks and the Lancaster territories, which were the plantations and the cadet branches. Okay? Why do I make this argument? Why? Why? Who is Ashton? Ashton was king of the Anglo-Saxons from 924 to 927, and king of English or Angles from 927 to his death in 939. He was the son of King Edward the Elder, and he was the grandson of Alfred the Great. Okay? Look at his complexion. Okay? Excuse the whitewash. Right? Look at it. Now let's go back to English overseas possession. English overseas possession. The origin of the English overseas possession dates back to the first period, what we call the 100-Year War. Not the second 100-Year Wars, started under the Glorious Revolution, but the first 100-Year War, which started with the, as they said, the Plantagenet Crown, 1109. All right, let's see. The English overseas possession, all right, started with Kingdom of England, dating back to Ashton, even when we're being invaded by Vikings, all right, such as William the Conqueror, all right, as well as the let's just read it in its entirety because we're closing. The Kingdom of England is generally dated from the rule of Ashton from 927 during the rule of the House of Capet, the House of the Danish Vikings, Knut the Great, Niglinga, from 1013 to 1014 and 1016 to 1042. England was part of a personal unit that included domains of Scandinavia. And 1066, William the Conqueror invaded Normandy and conquered Eden. So he invaded Normandy and conquered England. We know we can trace that to the Anglo and French War, okay? But we know that the England was warned against the Capetan dynasty and the Duchess of Normandy, okay? Which involved William the Conqueror over the crown of England, which is called Crown Land. Because we see here in 1066, William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, conquered England, making the Duchess of Normandy a crown land of the English throne. Through the remainder of the Middle Ages, the kings of England, i.e., the English king or Anglo king, not the English king, they only called that because of William the Conqueror. It says, through the remainder of the Middle Ages, the kings of England held extensive territories in France, and we also including overseas territories, based on their history and this duchy. Under the Angevin Empire, England formed part of a collection of land in the British Isles and France held by the Plantagenet dynasty. The collapse of this dynasty led to the 100-Year Wars. Did you hear that? And the 100-Year Wars were the war between the Capetan and Plantagenet dynasty and the what they call the House of Normandy and the Plantagenet dynasty. Let's just qualify it once we finish reading this out. So England formed a part of a collection of land in the British Isles and France held by the Plantagenet dynasty. The collapse of this dynasty led to the 100-Year War between England and France. At the outset of the war, the King of England ruled almost of France, but at the end of 1453, the only pales of Calais remained with them. So we see that the Kingdom of England under Ashton here in the Anglo-Sphere was ruled not just from Ashton, but all the way up from the Kingdom of Wessex to the Plantagenet Kings, all the way up to the 100-Year War, dealing with the descendants of the Angevin crown to get the House of York and the House of Lancaster. All right, we see it right here. Let's go back to 100-Year War real quick. I mean, the Anglo and French War. Anglo-French Wars. It also encompasses the Anglo and Spanish War. Once again, the Anglo-French Wars and the Anglo-Spanish Wars in the territories here in North America, called the Anglo-Sphere, was part of the first 100-Year Wars. Okay, between who? The Kingdom of England against the Capetine and the House of Normandy, which involves William the Conqueror. Okay, let's go down. Here, 100-Year Wars. That's the Spanish, Anglo and French Wars. Let's go ahead. 1337 to 1453. Right there. 100-Year War. 1337, 1453. Anglo-Spanish War. So the Anglo-Spanish Wars and the Anglo-French Wars were all a part of the Anglo-French War, going way back to the Capetine Plantagenet War, was all a series of wars that are called the 100-Year Wars. Okay. After that, you have what they call the War of the Roses. After that, you have what they call the invasion of the House of Tudors. After that, you have what they call the Glorious Revolution. After that, you have what they call the Bill of Rights, the Claim of Right, as well as the Treaty of Union 1707, which led to what we call the colonization over here in what we call North America. Okay? You see it for your own eyes. Here. So we see that Anglo-Sphere, if we talk about the English overseas possession, here, Anglo-Sphere. The core Anglo-Sphere. How did North America become the core Anglo-Sphere? It's on the same level with Great Britain, Ireland, and Scotland. But this is supposed to be the new world. This is supposed to be the new world, but yet it's considered the core Anglo-Sphere of the spirit of the angel. And that encompasses the land here before the colonial government was established here by invaders. Okay? By invaders. Yeah. Great Britain, we know, only came around through the second 100-Year Wars, which was the start of what we said, what? The Glorious Revolution, the Claim of Right of 1689, the Bill of Rights of 1689, the Treaty of Union of 1707 as a result of the Union of the Crown of 1603, as a result of the Treaty of Perpetual Peace of 1502, which resulted in the 13 colonies, which was the first 4 colonies was New Hampshire, Delaware, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And we know all those territories came back under the crown because the charges given to those proprietaries or proprietaries were based upon the charges granted by the crown, which was represented by a Scottish monarch or a de facto monarch as a result of what took place by the second 100-Year War, which were a series of wars. Okay? We must understand that. And this is why when you go back to the Library of Seisen, it was abandoned and they created what they call deeds to start recording land transactions as a result of the unlawful conveyances that were done by what we call fee and simple, okay, through common recovery. Let's go back to the Library of Seisen. Inquisition post-mortem and library of Seisen. Under the feudal system, all land belonged to the monarch and was therefore either held by him directly by his royal demise or on behalf directly or indirectly by his viceroy, i.e., his representatives. Those who held land directly on the king's behalf were known as tenants-in-chief. When a tenant-in-chief died without an heir, his land exceeded to fell into the hands of the king. If there was an heir, the king kept the land until livery of Seisen took place, i.e., delivery of the possession of the land from him to the grantee, i.e., the new possessor of it. Took place. The heir paid a sum of money, a relief, to take lawful assumed possession of that land. Did y'all hear what I'm saying to y'all? All right. If an heir was under the age and king kept the land until he or she came of age at 21 for men and 14 years for women, the king received rights of wardship and marriages, collecting the revenues of the estate and disposition of the heir in marriage. This is called exchequer, okay? Current account, all right? Current account. He was able to sell these rights to a third party whom were not necessarily the ward's next kin. This feudal tenure and rights were abolished in the interregnum. You hear that, y'all? Livery of Seisen was abolished interregnum, which was established by Charles Oliver Cromwell and Charles II. All of it was a one parliament, i.e., what you call a republic, which you still have now. So that means that this is still an interregnum, which means that the livery of Seisen could not be conveyed like it was supposed to as a result of an interregnum, which means that ain't no king. All right? So he abolished in the following period of government the reign of Charles II in 1660 to 1685. That's called the Feudal Tenure Abolition Act. In 1660. I'm not looking it up. When you get time, write it down. Feudal Tenure Abolition Act of 1660. I want to go to qualify everything that we're saying. So King Charles II abolished livery of Seisen. All right? Why would he do such a thing? Let's see. Closing. How many of y'all can show facts like this? You are viewing an archived copy from New Jersey State Library. Circumstantial evidence. Reports and recommendations related to the statutes of fraud created by Charles II in 1677. The Feudal Tenure Abolition Act was created by Charles II in 1660. Okay? Why did he create the Feudal Tenure Abolition Act in 1660 to abolish all feudal tenure in states, and then the Statute of Fraud Act in 1677 to make sure that if a conveyance was done in feudal tenure, that it must be in writing to make sure that either it was a valid one or a fraudulent one. And if it was a fraudulent one, then you will be in a world of trouble. How? That's cool. Final report, 1991. New Jersey Law Review Commission. Newark, New Jersey, 07102. New Jersey Statute of Frauds, revised statute 25:1-1 through 9, like similar enactments in every state, derived from the statute from the preventions of frauds and perjuries passed by Parliament in 1677 by Charles II. The English statute, totaling 24 individual sections, included provisions that require transfer of land to be in writing, discourage transfers of land, and defraud of judgment creditors, and oppose from maladies on all wills or personal property. The statute also contained provisions which required certain types of agreements to be in writing in order to be enforceable. All right? We're talking about the statutes of fraud of 1677. In the almost 20 years since the adoption of the statute of frauds in the state, as well as in other jurisdictions, both the wisdom and efficiency of some of the provisions of the statute have been debated extensively. During the same time period, however, the legislature has seen fit not only to add provisions to the original statute, but also particularly in recent years, to add similar provisions in other areas of the statute. It is appropriate under the circumstances to examine the policy reasons underlying the original provisions and to determine whether and to what extent these policy reasons remain valid to this day. In entitling this project, the Commission had deliberately avoided the use of the term statutes of fraud. I wonder why. Once again, in entitling this project, the Commission had deliberately avoided the use of the term statutes of fraud by way of underlying the fact that limited opportunities for fraud is only one policy that may be served by imposing a writing requirement. The Commission identified two additional policy reasons that could support the imposition of writing requirements in certain types of transactions. As a result of this method of study, the Commission's recommendation ranged from complete elimination of the writing requirement in certain transactions, modifications of provisions concerning lease or real estate, trust in real estate, and contracts for sale of real estate, and substantial retention of the preclusive writing requirement in the case of conveyances of land and surety of contract. Y'all better listen up right now. Land provisions of the statutes of fraud. Not talking about contract. It's just specifically land provisions. Okay? Land provisions. Nowhere are the English origins of the American legal system more apparent than in the law of real property. They talking about land. They ain't talking about cars, or any other movable property or tangible property. I talking about real property, land, building, fixtures, okay? Water rights, air rights. This is what they're talking about, okay? It says, nowhere are English origins of the American legal system more apparent than in the law of real property. Both our statutes and judicial decisions on the subject are founded in the concept that were established in England over 5 centuries prior to 1776. In particular, the codified laws or the incorporated laws of the amended laws of the state shall incorporate centuries-old English statutes that establish fundamental property law principles. One is the Queen Imperatrice, other one is the Statute of Uses, and the other one called the Statute of Frauds, which we're talking about now, right? The first 5 sections of revised statute 25:1-1, which is 1 through 5, are derived from the English Statute of Frauds of 1677, although frequently regarded merely as a rule of contract law. The New Jersey version of the statutes contain a number of provisions that are concerned with transactions in land. Section 1 and 2 of New Jersey statute declares most transactions in land to be void unless they are in writing. Jersey statute declares most transactions in land to be void unless they're in writing. Section 3 and 4 require most transactions involving trust in land to be proved by writing of Section 5D requirement, which contracts for sale of land to be in writing in order to be enforceable. Okay? Why is this important? Let's see. Paragraph right here, you know. Because the writing requirement for land transactions is so fundamental to our present-day conveyancing system, it can be difficult to imagine a time when it was otherwise. So they're talking about the recorder of deeds, the process in which you use now, all right, which is the way of how conveyances are recorded in lieu of the statute of frauds. Now under the statute, provides statute, amend the statute, the requirement for a conveyance or any contract between two parties must be in writing, enforced under the statute of frauds, which is a common law statute arising from a monarch, Charles II, as well as other statutes that were incorporated along with that statute, going all the way back to Edward I, which is the ones who were responsible for the conflicts in regards to reverse and management of the state, going back to the first 100-Year Wars and now the second 100-Year Wars, which resulted in the unconstitutional and the avoidable ways that the land is being conveyed, which is being proven here by the New Jersey Commission of Law. Let's prove it. It says that in England, prior to the statute of frauds, however, the transfer of a land by seisin, i.e., possession, derived from feudal concepts of landholding. All right, from feudal concepts of landholding. We know Charles II abandoned livery of seisin, which is a feudal tenure of landholding or conveyance of land, feudal land tenure holding. All right. He abolished it in 1660 and then passed the statute of frauds in 1677. All right, which required now that you could no longer convey the land based off livery of seisin, which two forms was either by deed or by law. Okay, by deed or by law, which were processes done before you even had a recorder of deeds even thought of. Okay, and that was done by way of what we call a witness. A witness, and this witness in this day and time is called a notary republic. Okay, a notary republic. While this method was workable when most of the population was illiterate and owning of land was a matter of common knowledge in the community, in the 7th century, this type of conveyance had largely been superseded by modern written forms of conveyances, and old forms increasingly were used when a secret conveyance was wanted for illicit purposes. I repeat, while this method was workable when most of the population was illiterate in ownership of land was a matter of common knowledge. So ownership of land was a matter of common knowledge, which refers to those who were the ones who conveyed the land based off the common law of the land. Those who didn't convey the land based off the common law of the land was those who were illiterate in ownership of land, which makes them immigrants or migrants who were allowed to by way of either some authority given to them by the owner of the land or that illicit purposes, which we're speaking about right now. Okay, which we're speaking about right now. Because we know that when our ancestors did it in lieu of the feudal tenures that were given prior to the Feudal Tenure Abolition Act of 1660, they were competent of how the land was conveyed, going back all the way to Ashton, all right? Because we know that the Anglo-Spare, based off the English overseas possession, goes back to Ashton, which is a process that William Penn used, but William Penn was not an Anglo-Saxon descendant like Ashton, which created and established the archaic ceremonial rites. Okay? Let me take a breather. Let me take a breath on that. Okay. So it says, this method of conveying livery of seisin derived from feudal concepts of landholding, meaning that if it derived from feudal concept of landholding, that means that feudal tenure estates were given out, and they were given out prior to Charles II abandoning the giving out of feudal tenure estates, which are called estates of land, which are required by proof of the conveyance, which you would call a deed. And that deed is what required by a written instrument to prove that it was living up to the standard of what we call the statute of fraud. Okay? Because if it didn't, that means that it was illicit purposes or fraudulent purposes by way of the statute of fraud, because the way they were doing it prior to the statute of fraud being created was illegal as well. Okay? It was illegal because those who conveyed it to those who would receive it illegal was the ones who conveyed it illegal, and that was Charles II. Through the livery of seisin process that William Penn adopted by way of the deed he received from a de facto minority. Okay? These are facts indisputable. So I'm going to read that paragraph again. While this method was workable when most of the population was illiterate in ownership of land, was a matter of common knowledge in the community. In the 17th century, this type of conveyance had largely been superseded by more modern written forms of conveyancing, and the old forms increasingly were used when a secret conveyance was wanted for illicit purposes. Let's see how they did that. The lawmakers of the day came to recognize that ceremonial conveyances of land facilitated difficult parts of the ceremonial conveyance of land facilitated tax evasion and fraudulent transfers of land and made litigation over title to land more difficult to resolve. Did you hear that? The lawmakers of the day came to recognize that the ceremonial conveyances of land facilitated tax evasion and fraudulent transfers of land and made litigation over titles to land more difficult to resolve. This is what you call common recovery, right? The statute of frauds changed conveyancing practice in England by expressly eliminating conveyances of land by lottery of seisin and by requiring conveyances of land to be in writing. So the New Jersey Review of Law Commission just validated what they said on Wikipedia in regards to lottery of seisin being abolished by Charles II by way of the creation of the statute of frauds in 1677 as a result of him abolishing the feudal tenure estate in 1660, because those feudal tenure estates that were being conveyed was by way of what we call fee simple. And this is why Queen Imperatrix was created by Edward I to stop fee simple conveyances of land, which was a violation of the crown land, because crown land was entail land, and entail land could not be escheated to a state based off the eminent domain power of the state of what we call acquisition of or prescription of sovereignty. Okay? No one else is dropping it like this. No one. All right? So we see Charles II passed the Feudal Tenure Abolition Act, which was the abolition of feudal tenure estates, and that meant that the land remained allodial. All right? It remained allodial. And then recording of any land that was recorded based off the tenant-in-chief who received it from the original grantor remained as if it did, even if you substitute it, because based upon the statute, it remained in free and common soaking. That means that that escrow account or that trust account, which created by what they call your broker or escrow agent, which is licensed by the state, is a result of the exchequer or the current account to make sure that that record or that account of all those taxes that are going into that account outside of the mortgage fees that you receive, which is the non-defeasible, which is not an indefeasible title, because the chain of title could not be cleared because there's a gap in it. Why is there a gap in it? Because the gap in it is that going back to the 100-Year War, which was the result of wars that resulted in the dispute over the land, which is in question in the first place. Okay? We must understand that. All right? So as we can see, they created the recorder of deeds, all right, to now record instruments in regards to land conveyances, all right, as a result of the statute of frauds passed by a Scottish monarch who is a de facto monarch and who was sitting on the English throne through what we call the Glorious Revolution, through the Claim of Right and the Bill of Rights of 1689, which resulted in what we call the Second 100-Year Wars, which resulted in conflicts that predate them, which was based off the first 100-Year Wars, which was based off the estate in question that was preserved by Edward I, Queen Imperatrix statute, as mentioned in this New Jersey Law Commission, which I'll address and which I'll go to again before I close out on this article. Right here. Queen Imperatrix, 46.3-9. That is a New Jersey 2024 statute. All right? All right? 2024. Because we know that the only person that can make a claim in regards to intel land was the king, being that the land was exceeded. All right? And if it's exceeded, that means that all heirs are considered dead. Okay? So that means that it falls under inquisition post-mortem under lottery of seisin, and that means that it falls in the hands of the king as crown land. So this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing in regard to reclaiming the land by way of lottery of seisin, which happens, as we said, by two ways: lottery of deed and lottery of law. Lottery of deed is when two parties go and they make the transaction by the twig and turf ceremony, as William Penn did. All right. but we're not using that ceremony. Why? Because that ceremony, based on how it was conveyed to us by our ancestors, was done when we were not on this plane of thing made manifest. So that means that the conveyance was done based off the other way of conveyance, which was based off livery of law. And let's look at it. In closing, two types of delivery of possession of property refers to two ways: lottery and a deed, whereby the parties meet together on the land and transfer symbolically the deliver possession of the land by handing over a twig or clump of earth to the recipient. This is usually called the third party, i.e., your what they call your middleman, i.e., your stakeholder, your escrow agent, your stockbroker. All right, I mean not your stockbroker, your broker, your real estate agent. This one is the one who acts as an interpreter. He's the one who acts as the stakeholder to hold on to all property, assets until the deal is done. Okay? So the one who is the owner proves he is the owner. That's the situation we're in now. Everyone who claims to have an interest in property acts nothing more than what they call the escrow agent and the stakeholder, because no one can prove they own it because their way of conveying it is licensed by the state and is regulated by the state. And the state don't even own it because the highest form of ownership by the state or the United States is fee simple. And fee simple is the way that it was stolen through what we call common recovery, which was a violation of the Penal Act passed by Charles II at the restoration of the crown, because we see under New Jersey revised statute 46-3-1, 46-3-2, 46-3-3, 6, 5, 15, 10, that these methods under fee simple will not work anymore, which has been the continuous way they do business by way of it being the deed being what's finishing. We know that lottery indeed is whereby two people go and have a witness confirm the transaction or conveyance. All right. This is the what we call uh proof of recordation of a title. All right. The way proof is proven in regard to recordation of a title. All right, which is governed by the statutes of fraud. Okay. So one way is by way of a middleman, which is a broker, or another way is by the original grantor going to you and telling you this is your land, and then you later going to retrieve that land. Okay, but there must be a way of proving that the conveyance was based off lottery and seisin, and that's based off the witness. Okay, the witness. All right. How would this qualify? Let's see. I, New Jersey Law Review Commission. Going back there again. Reports, recommendations related to recordation of title and document. We're not dealing with the statute of fraud. We're dealing with recordation of title. Okay? All this is evidence I'm using for the trial. Everything, they already got this on the docket. All right? This is the evidence I'm using to support that the state of New Jersey don't have a chance in the world of winning this case. All right? Why? Because they're acting as a stakeholder by interpleading on behalf of the state on lieu of the process that was allowed by the state by way of the creation of the county record by uh, recording false deeds. Okay, these deeds are false because they does not prove that the grantor was the original owner of the deeds that were filed in the county clerk. That's proven. Officers authorized to take acknowledgement. The officer of the state authorized to take acknowledgement or proof in the state or in any or any of other United or in any other United States or foreign jurisdiction are one. An attorney at law, right? We don't want to use that one. A notary republic, a county clerk, deputy county clerk, a register of deeds or mortgages, or a deputy registrar, or a surrogate or a deputy surrogate. Okay? These are the 5 methods that you can use in regards to those who are authorized to take acknowledgement of the hereditary fact of a qualified deed. All right? The attorney general, a notary public, county clerk, register of deeds, or a surrogate, deputy surrogate. We know that surrogate court through a probate court. All right. Register of deeds deal with the county clerk, just as the county clerk or deputy county clerk, which all work in the manner of not just recording them, but authorizing them. All right. It can also be done by, as we said, an attorney at law, a real estate attorney, or what we call a title insurance company. Okay. A title insurance company or a notary republic. Yes, a notary republic. A notary republic is a public servant that validates as a party or in lieu of a contractual agreement between the conveyance between the grantor and grantee. That can be recorded upon demand on the county record based off the statutes of fraud as established by New Jersey by statute, which amended the Statute of Frauds Act of 1677. You see it right here. Okay? The deed we presented was notarized by the notary republic. Somehow, the attorney's upset with that, the county clerk upset with that, they're upset with that, and the surrogate or deputy surrogate is going to be upset with that. Why? Because we're proving what they allow to be filed is fraudulent and is a violation of law, because we know that under the Philadelphia Abolition Act of 1660, no deeds supposed to be filed on any record of law. How we know it? Let's pull it up. Here. Abolition Act of 1660 contains this language. The act was part of enforced in the United Kingdom at the end of 2010. All right, and this is an amendment of the original Act of 1660, which language says what? Is that all the things are after to be created by the King Majesty, his heirs, successors, upon any gift or grant of any manner of land, tenements, or hereditaments of any state of inheritance at the common law shall be and remain free and common socket, and should be just to be in free and common socket only, and any law or reservation to the contrary thereof is anywise notwithstanding. Okay? Well, let's find this Teen Abolition Act and the New Jersey Revised Statute. You want to do that, y'all? Statute right here. We come to our close. Right here. Pennsylvania Abolition Act of 1660, and then you got the Pennsylvania Abolition Act statutory form. Right here. Feudal tenure abolition. All right. Same thing. All right. Why? Because Livery Seisen was abolished. All right. It was abolished. All land is allodial. Why? Because under Inquisition post-mortem, ain't no king came to be at the age to take it, so therefore it falls under what we call exceeded. Exceeded means that it falls to the crown. Okay? It falls to the crown through seisin. Yeah, they got a statute of seisin, a covenant of seisin. That's what it's called. Let's look at it in close. Reserved by statute covenant of seisin. All right? A covenant or agreement, contract, whatever you want to say it, by the grantor in a deed that he has lawfully seized or possessed of the said land should have the same effect as if he had covenant or agreed or contract or promised and granted to and with the grantee, his heirs and his signees. And that at the time of the sealing and delivery of the deed, he, the said grantor, was seized in his own right of the absolute indefeasible estate of inheritance in fee simple. A fee simple is not an indefeasible estate. Fee simple is a state that's not indefeasible because an indefeasible state means a clear chain of title. Okay? So it's telling you under the covenant of seisin that a clear chain of title, which the indefeasible estate can be claimed by a grantor or a grantee, one and the same, based off the implementation of the statute. And I read it again. A covenant by the grantor and a deed that he has lawfully seized of the said land shall have the same effect as if he had covenant, promised, and granted it to and with the grantee. Did you hear that? Let's go to the next one. What is shit calling for? That's 5. Covenant at acquired possession and freedom from encumbrance. A covenant by a grantor in a deed that the grantor shall have acquired possession of the said land shall have as much effect as if he had covenant that the grantee, his heirs, and assigned might at any time, at all times thereafter, peacefully and quietly enter upon and have, hold, use, and occupy, possess, enjoy the land conveyed by the deed, or intended so to be within all the buildings thereupon, the privileges and appurtenances thereto belonging and received and taking the rents and profits thereof to and for his and their use and benefit without any let, suit, eviction, interruption, claim, or demand whatsoever of the grantor, his heirs, assignees, or any other person whomsoever lawfully claiming or claiming the same. Did y'all hear what I'm reading to y'all? Do y'all hear what I'm reading to y'all? Apparently y'all don't. All right. So as we can see, in regards to what we call indefeasible, okay? Indefeasible. A fee simple deed is not an indefeasible deed. Once again, in closing, a fee simple deed is not an indefeasible deed. Okay? Let's see. Let's see. Because the indefeasible deed don't need title insurance. Title insurance is what's given to a fee simple deed. Let's see. In closing. Abstract. Yeah. In closing. Abstract title. Okay? Everybody see this? An abstract title is a condensed history of title to a particular parcel of real estate, consisting of a summary of original grant and all subsequent conveyances and encumbrances. That's what the escrow account is for, affecting the property and its certification by the abstractor. Okay, the abstractor is the one who does the title search of the title search on the county record. All right. Once again, that the history is complete and accurate. In the United States, the abstract of title furnishes the raw data for the preparation of a policy of title insurance for the parcel of land in question. So what is title insurance? Title insurance is a form of indemnity insurance predominantly found in the United States and Canada, which insures against financial losses from defects in title to real property and from the invalidity or unenforceability of a mortgage loan. Unlike some land registration systems in countries outside the United States records of deeds generally do not guarantee indefeasible titles. To those record titles, title insurance would defend against a lawsuit attacking the title or reimburse the insurer for the actual monetary losses incurred up to a dollar amount for the insurer provided by the policy. Y'all better understand what I'm saying. The first title insurance company, Law Property Insurance, the Trust Society, was formed in Pennsylvania. Did you hear that, y'all? In Pennsylvania. Typically, the real property interests insured are fee simple ownership or mortgages. However, title insurance can be purchased to insure any interest real property, including an easement, lease, or life estate. I rest my case. Okay? It's not indefeasible. What is indefeasible? The register of titles is said to confer indefeasible of title to the person or person registered on the register as proprietor or joint proprietor of land. Although the concept indefeasibly is similar to that of conclusive evidence, in practice there are some limitations to indefeasibility and different jurisdictions have different laws on it. So it goes back to the original origin of the chain of title. Let's look up chain of title and close. Come on, right? We know we don't want to use no attorney, no clerk, no circuit, uh, uh, officer. We want to use the notary. Why? Because that's the only legal proof to prove that there's a clear chain of title. Okay? Because we know that all the other ones are based off an abstract title, and the abstract title is the property abstract done by what? An abstractor. We know what abstract means. Who can't prove it? That's why we talk about concrete versus abstract. So abstract is what y'all have now, and concrete is what we about to get. A chain of title is a sequence of historical transfer of title to a property. It is valuable to in identifying and document past owners of property and serve as the property historical ownership timeline. The chain runs from the present owner back to the original owner of the property. In situations where documentation of ownership is important, it often is necessary to reconstruct the chain of title. To facilitate this, a record of title document may be maintained by a registry office or a civil law notary. Did you hear that? What's a civil law notary? Yeah, for the Republic, all right? Notary Republic, as I said earlier, Notary Republic, all right? So our deed, all right, was filed and signed by the Notary Republic in lieu of conveying the land from the grantor to the grantee, which is me as the king of England, which was the grantor, the crown, all right? And when the grantor was conveyed from the crown to the king, I, King Clifford Jefferson, I'm able to incorporate based off the Notary Republic to validate that the conveyance was done based off library of Seisen, based off library of law, and not library of deeds, because the deeds that are filed with the county now are fraudulent deeds, and we'll close out on that, right? County recorder of deeds. In closing, you got a deed filed in here, and one of these county records, you're in a world of trouble, right? Frederick Douglass, an Anglo-Saxon Berber, all right? You can read his book, From Bondage to Freedom, page 58 or 59, he said his fraternity is Anglo-Saxon. So in that respect, it says recorder of deeds or deeds registry is a government office tasked with maintaining public records and documents, especially records relating to real estate ownership that provide persons other than the owner of the property with rights over that property. Did you hear that? So when the recorder of deeds was created by way of the statute of frauds, they have all deeds recorded and filed was a result of what was done by Charles II to the recorder Philadelphia Abolition Act of 1660. that all feudal tenures were abolished, that if there was a tenure out there existing, it must be recorded so you can prove that the conveyance of how it was conveyed must go back to the original conveyor, which was based upon crown property or the crown debt. Because dealing with crown debt, the crown was next in line when all land is ceded. Okay? We must understand that. So all conveyance is done from the time of the Articles of Confederation, the states, United States, it was all done fraudulently to give property to owners other than the real owner. All right? Other than the real owner. So with that, stop. My mouth is about dry as cotton. Right? So if there's any questions, I'll leave the floor for questions. Any questions, please ask them now. While I wait for those questions, this is synopsis of what was talked about today. We understand that concerning North America colonial government, we have to first investigate the colonial government that was here before Great Britain. And that's the history concerning New France and New Spain. New France and New Spain was under the Kingdom of France and the Kingdom of Spain. This goes back to the origin concerning the Anglo-French War, which encompassing the history dealing with the Capital Plantation rivalry in the 12th century, which also include the Anglo-French Wars that started in the 14th century, which all take place before we have what we call the War of the Roses. After the War of the Roses, you have another breakdown in the English stone line of succession as a result of the conflict that arose between the House of Tudors and the Scottish monarchs who banded together to infiltrate the English throne once again by way of what we call the Treaty of Perpetual Peace of 1502, which ended in what we call the Union of the Crown and the Treaty of Union in 1707, which led to the conveyances that were unlawfully done by way of Livery of Seisen by Charles II to William Penn, which was revoked because we know that Charles II didn't have the authority to convey any land based off any agreement that was made based off the belligerents that were at war with each other at that particular time through the American and what we call the Anglo and Franco alliances. Well, I should say the Franco and American alliance. Okay, they all stem back to the Anglo-France alliances, going back to what we call the 12th century, which was the Capital Plantation dynasty. And as we see here in New Jersey Law Commission review, that those laws going back to the first 100-year wars involving the Capital Plantation descendants were preserved in the New Jersey Law Commission review in regards to maintaining those records so that when the de jure era came up, that he will be able to partake of that practice through the preserved statutes under 46 colon 4-4, 5, and 6, in lieu of what we call covenant of seisin, which pretty much works the same way as library of seisin, being confirmed by a notary public, which is going to be the conclusion in lieu of this case that's filed for the county clerk record in its present date. So with that, I'm gonna close out on the lesson and wait for questions for those on the panel on the chat line. If not, we got about 2 minutes. If not, then we'll close out on this marvelous lecture. All those who want private lessons, in regards to broaden their understanding, I'm willing to make myself acceptable to that. So if you want to, please leave a remark in the chat, and we can take that under advisement. There will be a small donation fee for that as well, because it's outside of the class and outside of the temple business. But my job is to assist you any way I can. All right. So anyone want private classes, please let me know. The applicability of those private classes will not be effective outside of the temple. Just a note for the why. Okay, but I do extend myself to private classes. So all those who want to, please holler at your king. All right. From the chat, I see that everybody's on the same page, so I'm not going to hold you any longer. I know I had you all day. We're going to close out, as we always close out, in the spirit of the Third Covenant Church, and that is to restore the peace. Right. So as always, I greet you in peace, as I meet you in peace here at the Third Covenant Church of England. With that, we'll say peace.